All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Luis Chavez. I'm with the Career Ladders Project. We're very happy and proud to be associated with this regional teacher preparation training for counselors. Our role in supporting this project was to ensure that we reached out to counselors from across the region to come together to learn about teacher pathways, how to get students on the pathway, and how to support them more broadly. And here we have a special guest to help us relive the wonderful event that we had in November 29, 2017 at City College of San Francisco.
So, thank you, Luis. My name is Kathleen White, and I coordinate the Teacher Prep Center at City College of San Francisco. And we are very excited about our role in encouraging community college students to enter the field of teaching. We have funding from the California State Chancellor's Office to both promote teacher preparation at our own college, but also to do that regionally in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we have been at this work for 20 years. And are excited that our other community college partners also see the value of encouraging community college students to enter the teaching workforce. Right now, about 54% of the credential applicants in California indicate that they came from a community college, and we know that our students represent the K-12 students in the classroom. They come from the community, and we know that they make great teachers.
Thank you. And we're really excited about today because we're going to actually use material and short video clips from the actual workshop session that we had, as I mentioned before, November 29th last year. And we're going to do a little bit of dialogue between our listening and watching some of the video clips to really just enhance what we heard and also share this out with you watching this recorded webinar. The first up, we had a keynote that was quite wonderful. Dr. Jose Moreno is from Cal State Long Beach. He's the past chair of the Chicano Studies Department there at Cal State Long Beach. And in addition to that, he holds actually a number of positions, in particular in the teacher pathway, teacher development area. He's got a very strong passion, long history of really focusing on preparing teachers for educator roles throughout the state, but primarily through the Cal State Long Beach area. He recently received, just last year, an almost $3 million federal grant to focus in on teacher pathway development in lower income and with minority students in the area of Southern California. And so we're really happy that he'll be joining us, or he did join us, but you're going to get to hear him talk about the why this work is so important. And in particular, we invited him to speak to this session because we believe that community colleges provide that entry-level pathway for students that are interested in a teacher pathway. And because, and you'll hear more about this later from the discussion that we'll have, but also in addition to in the video, you'll hear about the need. And so if you don't know, there is a teacher shortage, and I would say a problem because there isn't enough young adults going into the teacher field that really are interested and want to do it. And so this workshop and this work in general is meant to try to get to that by having counselors being more knowledgeable about the teacher pathway. So let's begin by reviewing a short clip from Dr. Jose Moreno, who spoke about the importance of teacher pathway and teacher education.
Why this work that you're engaging in is so incredibly important. And our students do want to be teachers. They're actually not, the millennials, based on most surveys, they're not really interested in wealthy jobs. They're not interested in prestige. They're really interested in serving. They're really interested in getting some stability. They're really interested in having mobility with that stability. So in terms of teaching, in my classes that I teach in education, the students are there out of pure heart, and they're wondering why can't they get more peers to be admitted like them? Why can't they get more students in the pipeline like them? And they talk about how many of their friends want to do what they're doing, but they weren't given the opportunity. So certainly the demography is there, the demography is wanting it, and now the demography demands it, as you can see by this data.
So as Jose mentioned, our students in the community college want to become teachers, and they have some barriers. And we're focusing primarily for this presentation on counselors, because counselors are so key in identifying the barriers that a student might be facing and helping them overcome them. Counselors are very often the first people that a student has a relationship with at a community college. They help them to develop their pathway. They help them to see themselves in a specific job. And so counselors are so key to helping our students visualize themselves as teachers and not being overwhelmed by the pathway itself. They want to teach. We need them to teach, and we see counselors as really being at the heart of increasing this pathway.
Thanks, Kathleen. I think Jose talking about the why for him and what was important about this work, and really elevating it to a high level of urgency that we all have. So that was really exciting to hear. We're going to hear more as we go forward with a number of video clips from the presentation. But I think that was a good place to start with the motivation of young adults who do want to enter this wonderful field of opportunity for them to support and build the next generation of educated community that will take roles that will support the whole community. So we're really excited about that. Next up is, we're going to just run through a number of clips where Jose talks about some of these elements that we'll be discussing throughout the webinar. We thought we'd share some of these clips and then have a very short exchange after each one. So we're going to go to the next video clip right here, and we'll come back at the end.
Our focus on access, equity, and diversity at Cal State Long Beach, and the needs as the purveyors of most credentials in the state. The Cal State produces 2 out of 3 teacher credentials in the state, produces 2 out of 3 administrative credentials in the state, which is kind of ironic because a lot of Cal State faculty, we complain a lot about the remedial students that come into our classes. Now we call them pre-baccalaureate students. Say, well, these kids aren't ready. Those high schools aren't preparing those kids. And then the high school teachers get mad and they blame the junior high teachers. And the junior high teachers blame the elementary teachers. Then the upper grade elementary teachers blame the lower grade elementary teachers. So now we developed a TK, right? Because the kindergarten teachers say, it's not us. They're just not coming to school ready, right? So now it's got TK, and now TK is saying, well, they're not going to preschool. They got to go to preschool. It's going to get to the point where you can have to turn your kid over right after birth. I mean, it's just, that's it, right? But what the common denominator is, it all falls back to blaming the parents. So much so in the Latino context is that we're saying basically we have to get kids out of abuelita's hands as soon as we can, right? Institutionalize them into preschool. Not that I'm opposed to preschool, it's just that when that's your policy framework, you're saying these kids are coming with a deficit. And the deficit is abuelita, right? Or grandma, or whoever took care of them, right? That's the deficit. So in other words, we're in schools, and we do this at the Cal State when we train our teachers, and we're shifting hopefully. What we're saying is that we have to get kids school ready, when it really should be getting schools kid ready, right? We have to get ourselves ready, like the community college system is trying to do, has been doing, and actually modeling in many ways. How do we get our system to work with the community that we're supposed to serve, right? And so at the Cal State level, we're trying to reconfigure ourselves to do that, because at the end of the day, when we were in faculty meetings, it was really funny in a meeting. One of us said, she'll go nameless, this person will go nameless, said, well, isn't it ironic? We're blaming the teachers for not preparing students, and we're the ones who train the teachers. The Cal State. We blame the high schools or the elementary schools for not being well administered and not using their funds effectively, yet we're the ones who train the administrators. So when does the cycle come back to us, right? And that's what the legislators beginning to ask, rightfully so. Sometimes not so nicely, maybe not so politely, maybe not so kindly, but they're asking the hard questions. And we've known in higher ed that they're going to ask us these questions.
So with that, I think Jose said a number of things that were pretty profound. I do believe that that statement about the focus on molding, changing, shaping students to be prepared for the educational pathway or the educational experience, as opposed to shifting, changing in the ways in which the institutions are better prepared to serve the students that are coming into the schools. So I thought that was very powerful.
Right. I think we have to shift the blame from schools and teachers and look at preparing future teachers as an opportunity to both diversify the teaching workforce here in California, but also improve child outcomes profoundly and meaningfully. We educators do tend to be good at blame, and yet we have these wonderful resources that come to school every day, and we're not good at promoting this profession, especially here at the community college. We have many jobs and careers that we're encouraging our students to enter. We know the high need careers. We know that there are jobs in biotech and STEM and healthcare and computer networking and cybersecurity. And those are all important jobs, but none of those pathways move forward without good teachers throughout the experience. So I think we have to value our own profession, value our commitment to education that we made, value why we chose this career ourselves, and own that and wear that and speak it proudly and loudly to our students. We need to sell our profession and explain why it's at the heart of social justice and why good teachers create social change. So I think, some of his points resonated with me, and I think we need to shift that.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. And I think this next clip that begins to talk about the pipeline across and supporting how our systems, other systems that are connected to this teacher pipeline need to pay attention and to start working together in a different way that will support more students going through this.
Our pipeline programs are so important, is to go work with our community college partners and our high schools to say, look, teaching is a profession that actually you can make a quality of life living with it. You're not going to get wealthy, but it's an option you should really think about in a much deeper way and profound way. By the way, in terms of preparing our students, very few institutions offer bilingual authorization. When we think about 1.2 million students in California are categorized as English learners or emerging bilinguals, we only have 30 programs in the state who actually authorize through bilingual authorization, the BILA program. We have less than 70, about 68 special education teaching credential programs in the state. We have about 85, 83 who do secondary teaching, and we have about 88 who do elementary teaching. So we're also really lacking in programs statewide. There's a capacity to fulfill that teacher shortage.
So we just got through watching Jose speak about the pipeline and the importance of that to be engaged with the institutions and the educators that are working on a number of areas. And in particular, I think the teacher pathway needs a lot of attention. And you know that very well, Kathleen, from your work, both locally and regionally, trying to support teacher pathways.
A few points I wanted to mention is that the community college student is much more likely to look like the K-12 student in the classroom in terms of their diversity and their backgrounds and the communities that they come from. So that's what makes us such a rich starting point for these pipelines. And things like dual enrollment programs that encourage high school students to start at a community college earlier allows us to really capture students at high school who are maybe thinking about going into teaching and working with young people, and who really are committed to serving the community that they come from. I think that we've been under-resourced. There's a belief that really teacher education does not start until a student enters a credential program. And in reality, there's much that we can do, and especially counselors can do, to ensure that our students, our dual enrollment students, and our regular community college students have experiences that lead to teaching careers as soon as they can. It's not something you put off till someone's a senior in college. It's something that you can start really as soon as a student indicates that they're interested and passionate about serving their community.
Thank you, Kathleen. So we're moving from talking about pipelines to now pathways, and what we're going to be watching another segment that has to do with that particular subject area. So we'll be coming back to talk about that.
I would encourage you, as you set up your pathways and develop those pathways with your four-year partners, that you infuse curriculum work in that, in terms of the preparation of those teachers, not just about seamlessness, but about effective seamlessness, to create those effective educators. But it's really tough to get people into these programs. As was mentioned earlier, salaries and all these things that are going on. So we saw that with the recession. In terms of enrollment teacher prep, you saw this dive. I mean, a huge dive between 2000, the turn of the century, to today, 2014, 2015. In terms of preparation enrollments in the state university system, about 10,500 students are prepared through the CSU UC, which is our teacher ed programs. And you see that the demand, this is the blue line, of new credentials is not keeping up now with the demand, right? It was going down because the demand was lower because of the recession. But now that the recession's gone and we're picking up in our recovery, now we have to turn the Titanic again, right? To get students interested in a profession that they were told not to go into because there's no jobs. And not only no jobs, but they're not very good paying jobs either. You can't get that now you can't even buy a condo, right? And
okay, so now we're back after listening and quickly listening to what Jose said about the pathways, in particular the work that needs to be in place for not just the high schools, community college, but four-year as well. This work is challenging because of all the systems that are involved, but if we're going to move the needle on increasing the number of students, and in particular the number of students that come from local communities to support and become teachers in their local communities, we need all the segments working together. And you've had some experience with that.
I think we need all the segments, and we also have to look at where teachers are coming from in a different way. A student may not present to a counselor with the highest GPA possible. They may, in fact, even be on credit recovery. They may have had what I would call a miseducation in their K-12 experiences. Those students actually will make powerful teachers. I think our job is very clearly to connect with students that are passionate about giving back to the community, passionate about serving children, youth, and even community college students, because our system needs more teachers too. We're going to be retiring someday, and we need to replace ourselves. So we have to really look at each student as a potential teacher. And if they have that passion, our job then is to ensure that they leave with the content and the skills they need to be successful. So sometimes teacher recruitment has been limited. We've limited the resources by saying a student has to present with a certain GPA or a certain set of content skills in order to move forward. And those are hoops that are, I think, artificial, and they keep out a diverse teaching workforce. So I really see our job as looking at every student as having the potential of becoming a teacher, and our job is to fill in the gaps, provide them with the content they need, and support their passion. And it's maybe a different strategy that's been used, but I think that's how we create this workforce. We only have about 40% of the students that we need in the teacher pathway right now in California. So we have a huge gap. And one of the reasons why we have such a huge gap is because we've been doing the same old things to recruit teachers. And we've got to break out of this strategy. We've got to shift the paradigm and look at students in a different way and look at their potential in a different way, and really bring up students that have the heart and just need a little bit more of a push or a little bit more support to get the other stuff in order. The heart's really the most important thing.
That's great, Kathleen. That statement really is sticking to my mind about what you said about us. A teacher can come really from anywhere. And I think the job as educators that we have is to ensure that those young adults that really find a love for this work and want to work with young adults, we need to find a way to get them on that path.
Absolutely.
And serve people in their community and their younger brothers and sisters and cousins and other family members.
That's right.
This is so beautiful.
Let me give you one example. In San Francisco Unified School District, we have almost 3,000 seniors that graduate each year, 2,800 seniors. If we were to just replace the retiring teachers and the shortages that we have in the San Francisco Unified School District, about 20% of those graduating seniors will need to choose to become teachers. We're not at that level yet. In one district, we're not at a point where we can say 20% of this graduating class is going to choose to work in education. And yet that's where we need to be. We have extreme shortages, not only in STEM, but in special education. We have growing shortages in the Bay Area in early childhood education. We're seeing shortages even at the community college level in CTE and in these dual enrollment pathways. So we need to really address this issue, prioritize this sector, and put more time and energy into cultivating the future workforce.
And I think that just to end, I think it really speaks to the commentary that Dr. Moreno made earlier about this is not just a localized issue, it's really state and national urgency and scale of an issue that we need to solve, thinking big and thinking local. So we're really excited.
And we're going to hear next from one of our counselors, Enrique Morales, who is a longtime educator, and he's going to talk a little bit about his passion and why he wants to make sure he stays passionate.
Thank you. We'll hear that now.
Just switch to the pig real quickly here, because this is really something that I'm very proud of. If you notice, and I was a little shy, the yellow one, I was a little shy to put the last point, number 8, the word passion. And I'm glad that it's been used already. Kathy used it once. So it's already been used at this conference already, that if your student, if your student is interested in go into the field as an educator, please find the passion in that student. And if the student is not aware of his or her passion, to get a hold of that, because our students will see right through you. Yes, all cultures express passion in different ways, but we all have passion. And we as educators need to have that passion. When both my daughters went into education, and it was their choice, my words to them were these: if you're going to be an educator, since you're going to be an educator, they were juniors in college, both of them at the same, 3 years apart. But when they said to me they wanted to go into the field of education, they wanted to teach, here's what I said to both of them individually at 3 years apart. I said, since you're going to go into the field of education, make sure you're an effective educator, otherwise get the hell out of the profession. Swear to you, those were my words to Rebecca, those were my words to Sarah. When I turned 64 5 years ago, okay, this is my 93rd semester. I was telling Dr. Jose, counting my high school teaching, this is my, enough of that, okay, this is my 93rd semester. That's counting my 17th semester, so high school teaching, okay. So Chris, I got you beat by a few years, it's spring of 80 here. But when I turned 64 or 65, my daughters wanted to meet with me that summer. So during springtime, they said, Dad, we want to come over and talk with you. So they came in, sat in the living room, And I was a little nervous because I said, what the heck's going on here? Yeah. So Rebecca begins, and they had notepads out, and they had a bag with them. And says, Dad, we have one question for you. We're going to give you a half hour to respond to it. And the question is this: are you still being an effective educator? Because if not, get the hell out of the profession. And I swear to you, I sat there, I was in a daze. Because part of me got really nervous, and part of me I felt so proud that what I had wanted them to do, because I believe in it, we're a social justice family, just leave it at that, that I wanted them to have certain thoughts about the profession that I carry.
Okay, we just got through watching your wonderful counselor Enrique talk about passion and also being an effective educator, which is a great both family story, but also speaks about the profession that he's had such a long history. Is there any commentary you want to?
Well, I think that it speaks to making sure that a student has that passion. A counselor most certainly can ask probing questions about the kinds of jobs that the student sees themselves in. If they say things like, I want to help people, I want to give back, I want to tutor, I like children, I like youth, I like education settings, or even I didn't do that well in school myself, and I didn't always want to be there, but I think I can do a better job for the next generation. Yeah. It's that commitment. And if you see that spark and that commitment, I would say that a counselor most certainly can encourage a student to explore. Right. And that's where having certain kinds of ideas kind of available is important for a counselor, because they can suggest things, courses, and things to try that would help a student explore this career. And
I really appreciated that explanation about how he connected both the passion and being an effective educator. And at the same time, I'm thinking, putting a little bit of my counselor hat on from my days of training as a counselor, that this idea of finding passion, to me, I think about that as values clarification that counselors do with students. And these are not new skills that counselors need to bring to the table. They have the tools as a counselor to help students find that path. And the values clarification for me is always a good one, because it is about finding passion, but it's also about finding what you're good at, what you think you're good at, what you think you're going to like. And that could be a multitude of tools that counselors have at their disposal. I'm thinking also of the MBTI, where students do some of this work in classrooms. So as the students are working through a pathway, counselors can be along the side, helping to make sure that they're refining their view of their pathway and making adjustments along the way, because there's so many avenues or potential ways to go within a teacher pathway. As I understand it, it's quite broad.
It is
so
broad.
It's about choosing something within that pathway that makes the most sense for them, so that we can have, in the end, an effective educator.
Right. And now we're going to hear from Counselor Lee Meow Lovett, who is talking about her strategies when she's working with students who are considering careers in early childhood education or elementary education, and some of the things she does to clarify the direction they see themselves in going.
Great.
In terms of teaching, I really break it down for, the people who want to work with young children. So I say, if you want to work with a 5-year-old in California, they could be in a number of settings. There actually are a number of kids who are still in family daycares. There are a number of kids at 5 who are in preschools or child development centers. And then there are certainly a number of kids in transitional kindergarten, that's growing. And then also in kindergarten, some are still starting, probably not at, used to be you could start at, age 4 years and 10 months, right? But now that's shifted more as public schools have changed their requirements. But I really try to distinguish, especially for students like international students who don't understand our system, that you have a different set of requirements when it comes to early childhood teaching and to K-12 or K-8 teaching for elementary, right, and middle.
Okay, we're back. That was great to hear from another counselor that's doing some great work, identifying ways in which students can connect both their own cultural language experience with this idea of entering a teacher pathway.
Many of our students at City College start with early childhood pathways simply because you can earn what's called a terminal degree at a community college, and you're then fully qualified to teach in an early childhood setting. And we know that the experiences that a student has in early childhood translate wonderfully into teaching in other settings. So many of our early childhood teachers later go into elementary education. They continue on the pathway. So the kinds of questions that a counselor asks when a student first identifies as a future teacher are important to help a student not only see what's available short term in terms of employment and in terms of an immediate pathway, but also long term. And when we look at long term, I'd like to introduce another counselor, Gabrielle Martinez Valdek, and he's going to talk a little bit about a counselor's role in helping a student set goals that a student may present with an immediate career requirement for courses, but he also has to mention graduation and also look at transfer requirements and set out an ed plan that goes down a road maybe that the student doesn't always articulate right away. They're just looking at the next semester and the next job. So Gabrielle has some strategies around that.
Let's listen in to those and we'll come back at the end.
I think one of the challenges is helping them envision past, not just past the associate's degree, past transfer, but what is going to happen after that bachelor's, right? I think it's a challenge for them. It's such a struggle, especially for the working adults, to be coming here. Large majority of them have their own families, so they're coming here, studying hard, working all day with children, then coming and studying about children, then they go home to their children. So that's a big challenge for them to envision going for a credential, even much less, let's get that bachelor's degree. So, but laying sort of a general framework for them to envision it, and then continuing that discussion. I think we see a lot of repeat students, right? You start seeing the same students, they keep coming back to the same counselor, which is great. So continuing that discussion that you had with them in the previous session, even though it's a challenge, I think it does make a difference.
Great, thank you. What was that, the focus of this particular conversation had to do with transfer and strategies to support students at the next level. So it was interesting, we've been following this pathway now of students entering a teacher pathway maybe at the lower end of the spectrum of teaching young adults or children, and then also thinking about other pathways that might require higher level degrees of means transfer.
Right, and I think it really points out to counselors needing to have in their toolkit just a basic understanding of the basic pathways that you need for teaching. In early childhood education, most certainly a community college student can obtain all the courses they need to become a certified early childhood teacher. They can hold a permit, which is issued by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and they can become employed. And they can actually become employed at a basic level in early childhood after one semester.
How many units is that?
Between 6 and 12 units, they can become employed. So many of our students, we have to recognize, especially if we're trying to diversify the workforce and assist our students in their educational goals, that they need jobs.
Right.
They need to be employed. I really do not know one student at our college that has ever said to me, I don't need any help. I don't need to work. I can just focus on my education. I've never met that student. I've been at City College for 23 years. So our students need jobs. And very often they start with jobs in early childhood, jobs in after school. They start serving youth in youth development agencies or recreation. They are tutors very often for children or other college students. So they get jobs kind of at the entry level, and they most certainly can secure some of those jobs with what a community college provides. But if they were to go forward and become credentialed, your elementary school teachers have to have a general liberal studies, child development background, and then they get a multiple subjects credential. So that's one pathway. If they were to go into high school or community college, they basically have to major in the area they're teaching. So if they want to be a math teacher, they major in math. But also need to take some courses in how to teach and in, I think, child development, so they understand who they're working with.
If I could just, because I think this is a really important point that you quickly went over, and I just want to make sure the counselors also hear the importance. When you say they should be out there in jobs, I know because of our past work together, this concept of learn and earn is so important, especially on the teacher pathway, because you want, in any field, for students to get a little bit of experimental or experiment with the field by having a little bit of time where they're actually in the field working with whatever level of credential or degree they have. And that way it's a boost. It financially could be supporting them in some way, and it keeps them on the same path rather than working in something that's
in a coffee shop where they're not. They may learn customer service skills, but it's not really helping them learn how to manage groups of children or youth, learn how to understand a school system, learn how to understand how programs are funded, how decisions are made. So we would really urge our community college students who, as I said, majority of them need to work, that they work in settings that are similar to their end goal. So, and that we also have courses. I would really suggest that counselors urge students to do things like work experience and field work and practicum in settings where they see themselves with their career goals, so they can make sure that's really for them. I've taught fieldwork courses, and I always have 2/3 of the students that say, this is great, I want to keep doing this, I love it. I always have 1/3 of the students say, nope, not for me. I didn't think it would be like this. It's either too noisy or too complicated, or I like dealing with children or youth one-on-one. And better to find out in college that this is not the right pathway.
Thank you. And our next video is going to be focused on the complicated or the structured pathways and how we can work with them better. And so we're going to hear from
Lee Lovett again, Lee Meow Lovett. And she kind of describes a little bit about some of the complications that she has to encounter when she's talking to students and trying to describe the pathways.
Well, let's listen to that.
But I really try to distinguish, especially for students like international students who don't understand our system, that you have a different set of requirements when it comes to early childhood teaching and to K-12 or K-8 teaching for elementary, right, and middle. And so I think Kathy mentioned before, with early childhood, you could have 6 early childhood ECE units. Here our department is called child development, but basically 6 or 12. I've always kind of seen the traditional core 12. And so we often advise our students to kind of get those core units down, and that's pretty consistent, right? Our community colleges all offer child development, a class in child development, some sort of general orientation class that introduces the field, a curriculum class, sometimes that's called different things in different colleges, and then child, family, and community. And I think that perspective is really important.
Great.
I think what, when I reflect on the stories that these counselors are sharing, I do think we have to really understand that becoming a teacher in California is complicated. There are, in my opinion, it's too complicated, but I think there are regulations and requirements that sometimes create barriers for both students and counselors to move forward in this position. So I do think that we have some work to do as advocates to make it less complicated and easier to understand for both students and counselors, so that we don't have students making decisions about careers simply because it's so complicated, but rather that they stay with their passion. Our counselors have to do a lot of work translating employment requirements into coursework and pathways. And I think some of what we've been hearing today are the strategies they use, and also some of the challenges that have come out.
What would you recommend for a counselor listening into this this session, this webinar, who is interested in doing more, or at least learning more, doing more with teacher pathways at his or her college? Would you recommend that they visit their child development teacher pathway if they have one on their campus? And if they don't, are there resources available?
There are. Part of why we have a regional approach and a statewide approach to teacher development is because we know we have some work to do around making this profession more understandable and easier to maneuver. And so I would really urge counselors to look further at their colleges and see if there are teacher prep centers, if there are Educating Futures components at their college. If there are not, I think they have to realize that they may be the point of contact then for a future teacher. And we have resources that are available, little one-page handouts on some quick strategies, things to utilize if you're counseling a future teacher. And I see these resources growing. As community colleges become more involved in teacher preparation, we have to also have the materials and the tools available for counselors and faculty to use when they're working with students. For many years, teacher development was thought of as something that you engage in after you graduate with your BA. It was something you do in your credential program. And we know that grooming new teachers, especially with the shortages that we're facing, has to start earlier. And the more experience we can provide to a student and the more resources when they're earlier in their educational career, the better teachers they become. So we're working on developing more resources. We know that's an area of need. And I would encourage counselors to also talk to each other and stay in touch with each other as we address this gap.
And I agree, because this is really part of the solution is that we recognize that there's, as you said before, teachers can come from almost anywhere, but the educators and those of us working in our systems and our institutions need to find a way to reach all those students that potentially could be an effective educator. And they need someone to help guide them navigate to and through a pathway. So I think the closer counselors can become associated with their education teacher pathway at their campus, or if they don't, learn about it through other, like the regional efforts that you're leading, to be knowledgeable and support all students trying to get through a teacher pathway.
Yes. We're now going to hear again from Gabrielle Martinez Valdek, and he's going to talk a little bit about his strategies. He understands the teacher pathway. He's been working with us for a long time.
And I understand he's
also at Berkeley City College. Yes, and he's had a long history of supporting community colleges, and being part of them. So he understands the pathway, and I think one thing that's clear to him, which he can articulate, is that students may present their need for specific courses, as I said, as a job requirement, but he also has to infuse his knowledge of general ed courses and why they need GE courses in order to graduate, and why they need to graduate in order to move on in their careers. So we can listen to him.
Right.
And then pushing them to venture out into the general ed courses. We sort of have our go-to general eds that we know students who are who their English levels still need to improve to be at the English 1A level, that they still can succeed in some of these GEs, or you might know specific instructors that are very ESL student friendly. So we definitely can help them get started on their GEs while they're still moving towards that English 1A or that college level composition class. And the critical discussion of the work-school life balance. That's a challenging one for the students, but that's one that we have with them every day. Yeah, and I was here full-time, and I'm here ultra part-time now. So there's a lot of things that have changed since I was here even, so I'm going to step back at this point, and I'll let those who are here on a regular basis speak on all those updates.
Okay, that was great hearing from Gabriel about the GE side and also job requirements and preparation.
When I said this is a complicated pathway, a student could enter early childhood, for instance, a teaching job in early childhood that's fused 12 units. Many communities, a student could become an after-school or recreation leader with 6 to 12 units. You could be a tutor with proving mastery in a subject. You could perhaps be a youth worker with some general ed courses and a commitment to youth and youth development principles. Those types of jobs build on teaching jobs that all require a bachelor's degree and then a credential. And we do have growing numbers of programs that are available in 4 years now in California. We have accelerated credential BA programs in California. We also have programs that include credentials and master's degrees. From my perspective, once a student has a BA degree, or even once a student transfers from community college, the choices they make after that become easy because they have the skills they need to transfer. Our job is to get them to that level, to transfer, and make sure that they're still employed and they're still they still have the experiential opportunities, so they're learning how to work with children and youth while they become transfer ready. And I think that's really critical for diversifying our workforce because we need more students to become transfer ready, and there are many things that work against them in our system. I think Jose mentioned several things. We also have issues of being emerging English language learners. We have issues around cultures that are not so familiar with the education system the way it is here and with the rules that govern that. So we have our work cut out for us, but it's very gratifying. I want to introduce Lee Lovett again, who comes from a perspective, she herself is an immigrant. She speaks a number of Asian languages, and so she's going to talk a little bit about describing how she talks to students who represent English language learner communities and emerging language learner communities, and encourages them to go into teaching.
Great, let's listen in.
With different populations, so I see a lot of the students who are primarily Chinese speakers, and they feel more comfortable being counseled in Mandarin or Cantonese. Our advisors also speak Spanish, and we have so many languages in the city of San Francisco among our population. So it's really important to kind of provide that small community, because we do have a lot of students coming through. And
okay, it was great hearing from Leah again, and this idea of building community. This is one of the areas why I love the teacher pathway so much, because it's so versatile, and it's really about servicing a larger purpose than just an educator. It's really about affecting a whole community.
And I think what counselors have to understand, and faculty, are that future teachers are people. If you're not a people person, you're probably not going to be a future teacher. So community is going to be very important for this group. They need to find connections. They need to find connections on their campus. They need to find connections in their departments. They need to have a counselor that's available, that they know, that they trust. And they need opportunities to interact with other students at school sites and at their jobs. They're people. So they're not going to be happy being given a task and being told to go in a corner and finish it. They want to make a difference socially. So counselors have to be tuned into this kind of person. When they see someone who says, oh, I love working with people, I really like the gratification of helping someone, that's your future teacher, and they have to have opportunities. We have to be better at creating a community, creating a pathway. I guess this is part of the guided pathway premise. Creating a community within a college that is supportive and holds them in their arms, and guides them through. Knowing that some of our best teachers need to be held in this way in order to be able to learn how to do this with children and youth. So counselors have a critical role in this, and so do faculty, and so do college environments. They have to have clubs and opportunities to give back, and they have to provide recognition for these students that are on their first steps of learning how to help other people. So absolutely, it's about community. And I believe that Jose is also going to talk a little bit about his beliefs around the importance of creating community.
Yeah. And we thought this would be a good way to kind of start wrapping up this webinar, to pull on some of these short pieces of commentary that Dr. Moreno gave. And this one in particular has to do with community.
And really, when we're talking low-income schools, we're really talking about helping our teachers understand how to understand culture, be it in Latino context, be it in context of poverty, context of African American students, or more diverse student bodies. In Long Beach, we have the largest proportion of Cambodian residents outside of Cambodia. So we have a very diverse community there in Long Beach. So our goal is to really prepare teachers to understand this thing called culture, and that it doesn't mean, or are we an institution to prepare people on how to think and how to engage in the world. And as Paulo Freire says, you read the word so you can read the world, right? So that teachers can truly engage in the lives of students.
2.3 million students in the community colleges in California. And how many of those students are going to become teachers? That's our charge. Jose gave us many reasons why we need to look at our system as being ripe for finding future teachers, and our counselors gave us some strategies. Our work is by no means easy, but it's clear.
Yes, it is clear. And I think you made a comment earlier about guided pathways, which is an undertaking of a large systemic challenge that we have. And this is the opportunity, I think, that teacher pathways have to be in that work, and I think could prove to be an area that is so potentially beneficial for so many students that are not sure about where they want to go or what path they want to follow. Education is a wonderful, rewarding career, and there's so many segments that they can go into that I think the more counselors learn about these pathways within the big pathway of teacher pathway, that actually would, I think, go a long way to helping stem the failure rates that we have with helping students get on a path that they stay on, complete, and move on into a career. So I think Jose's comments at the tail end of the workshop, where he shared the importance of community, of understanding the community, of the reason why the urgency is there for us to help more students get into a path that they're going to be successful at and become successful and effective educators is the reasons why I think you've been in this business for so long, and why I really enjoy working with you and the colleges that you represent and supporting the many pathways that we hope will get built out of this work. And we hope people have enjoyed listening to this commentary about the various speakers that we had all along the webinar. Just to wrap up and let you know that at the end of the November 29th session that we held last year, Kathleen did a wonderful segment where counselors from across the region came together. I think we had close to 60 or so counselors there, and we had a very vigorous, enjoyable conversation where they exchanged with each other ideas about how to learn more about and get involved with pathways, and that was hugely rewarding. We look forward to doing that again. Any other ending comments?
Just to summarize from our work, I would say I have some takeaway lessons. Number one, your future teacher may not look like you think. They may present as a student who is in credit recovery, who may not have even graduated from high school, but who says, I'm committed to my community. I want to help. I want to help. It could be I want to help children and youth to make sure they have better experiences than I did, to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to them. So it sometimes is not someone that comes to talk to you and says, I want to be a teacher. They may be disengaged from education, but they also have a commitment to making change. So are they passionate? Are they change makers? If you have that passion and you can provide supports like jobs, like a full understanding of financial aid availability, tutoring, supportive instruction where students can get help in areas that maybe they didn't do well in before. So it kind of takes a lot of things in a toolkit to turn someone in from someone who just has a passion and an interest and a desire to make change into a teacher, but it absolutely can be done. And then we also, because this is our chosen profession, right? We're all in the education system. We also collectively have, I think, a job to make change, to make financial aid more available, to make grants for future teachers more available, to simplify the process for credentialing, to get rid of barriers that we know are keeping students, especially students of color and emerging English language learners, out of teaching, and to increase transfer rates. These are all goals of the community college, but if we don't have more teachers, we do not have any of these pathways that California needs. Teachers are at the heart of all of them. Backbone. So that's, I guess, a takeaway, and I'm available, and all the partners working in teacher preparation in California are available for support, and we can have more information at the end of this webinar. Contact.
We will have a last slide available with information, email, contact, website, and maybe some of these tools that we talked about, and some of the reports that were mentioned during the webinar will probably also be listed there, and we'll probably end up adding more as we go along. So please come and visit. We thank you for spending your time with us. It's been a joy working with you again, and look forward to more of these in the future. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you all.